day 11 of 21 days of prayer and fasting. I'm Pastor Marc. Luke chapter 10, verses 1 and 2, it says, "After this, the Lord appointed 72 others and sent them 2 by 2 ahead of him to every town and place where he was about to go. And he told them, 'The harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Ask the Lord of the harvest, therefore, to send out workers into his harvest field.'" A mature Christian will be a reproducing disciple. We call this leadership. That is, it's a disciple who makes disciples. A sign of maturity in living things is the ability to reproduce. Imagine if every church member was reproducing a disciple. Jesus' disciples, they started as learners and followers, but then they all went on to become leaders. If we're going to be like Jesus, then we will do what he did. He made disciples. And not only did Jesus make disciples, but he developed them into leaders who went out and they made disciples who are leaders. And that's how the gospel moved forward. In following Jesus, we need to be developing as leaders and developing others into leaders. Now, this doesn't happen overnight. It's a slow process. It takes time and a lot of patience. Now, immediately, many people will discount themselves because they believe they're not a leader. Ken Blanchard, at a conference for business managers, asked the question, "How many of you think you are leaders?" Only 20% of the audience raised their hand, and they are all managers. They all have people reporting to them. They are all somebody's boss. All of them should have had their hand up. But only 20% of them thought they were leaders. Do you know why? The reason they do that is because they view leadership as a position, as a title. They felt like they didn't have a high enough position to be considered a leader. And Ken goes on to say, anytime you influence the thinking, behavior, or development of someone else, you're engaging in leadership. Now, it gets more interesting. His next question is profound. He then asked the question at this conference, think of who influenced your life the most in terms of who you are as a human being. Who influenced your life the most? And after giving them a moment to think about it, he asked them, now, for how many of you it's your boss at work? Almost no one raised their hand. When he asked them, well, who influenced you? Many of them mentioned a parent, a grandparent, a teacher, a coach, a friend. If you understand leadership as an influence process, then we are all leaders throughout our lives. We all have an impact on people's lives when we serve them, when we fellowship with them. So much of this can happen in a group of committed believers. When we have Jesus as our model, we're going to be able to influence our family, our friends, and in the church in powerful ways. So what we're praying for today is, one, we're praying for our growth track and our serve teams. This is the first step for many people. So pray for God's leading and direction for our growth track. Second, pray for leadership development. As Jesus told us, ask the Lord of the harvest to send out workers into the harvest field. So today, pray for the Lord of the harvest to raise up workers and leaders for his kingdom. That God would give us wisdom to train and equip our leaders, and for God to make his call clear on those he's calling. Third, pray for each of our leaders in the church. This could include not only pastors and staff and elders, but those who are volunteers in our church who lead groups and ministries. And fourth, pray for a fresh vision for our leadership in the future. Thanks for praying today. May God bless you.